Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news. Big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
Oh, look at us, both wearing our merch tonight. Didn't even plan it that way. How are you, man? How's your weekend?
Yeah, not bad. Went up to Christchurch because mother-in-law has come in from England. So we
Party time?
went up
Party
there.
time?
Absolutely party time.
Party time.
Really turned the weather on for us, so that was great. Driving
Yep.
back from Christchurch in a torrential downpour, and just once again, it's always a wonder to gaze upon the excellent driving decisions of the average New Zealand driver when visibility is down to less than 100 meters. Because don't change your behavior. Just continue to drive like a maniac. It's fine.
Got a lot going on tonight. Actually, two of our storylines kind of run down a similar sort of a line, because we're going to be having a talk shortly with Dr Suzanne Manning, who is the president of the National Council of Women of New Zealand. And we're going to be talking a bit about Winston Peters and the, making waves today, talking about a definition for women, bouncing off the back of what's happening in the UK. So we're going to talk a bit about that as well. We'll talk a bit about the Pope tonight. I think it's worth acknowledging and recognising. And also how Mr. Luxon evoked the name of the Pope today, talking about how generous and nice he was to the vulnerable, and kind of didn't see the irony in him saying these words out loud. This man of faith that everyone looks up to around the world, who's just passed away, who was so good for the vulnerable and stuff, as Christopher Luxon is the one passing on that message. Didn't see the irony there at all. So yeah, lots going on tonight. Also, are we going to talk about, I've forgotten the name of the show already. Some of Us? The
Last of Us. I just watched the first episode before jumping online here. So
you haven't seen the second episode?
I haven't seen the second episode.
Right.
I can see from the reaction what happened. I played the game, so I know what everybody's freaking out about. So yeah, it's one of those things when you play the game and you know what's coming. It's its own sort of thing of like, oh, people don't know this is coming.
I didn't see anything, didn't know anything, but I knew that episode 2 was going to be a big one because of the reaction I saw online. And then when I saw the reaction, I was like, I'm not going to read any of it. And Last of Us episode 2. You'll be watching it tonight, I guess, Chewy, eh? Straight after this. I'm sure you'll have to.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. We're pretty hot.
Text me when you've got to the end of the episode. Text me. All right, so we won't get into that. And a bunch of other stuff going on tonight, Whānau. I want to say a huge congratulations to Mr. Craig Rennie. I haven't even opened up my window yet. See what happens when we chat before the show, Chewy. So hopefully this means everything's working. There we go. Mr. Craig Rennie over the weekend got to number 2 in the charts for news on Apple for his show Locked Out. Made it into the top 10 overall. So of all the podcasts, he was number 8 in New Zealand overall. So very good news, and congratulations to Craig. He's got.
Hey, Pat, this probably brings up we haven't discussed this beforehand, but what if he eclipses us? We have built a kill switch into this show, right?
Now then we retire, bro. We live off him forevermore. You see how that works? And can I also say, speaking of living off him, how about some new stickers? What about that one? You like that one?
Nice.
Yeah, that one. How about this one? This one's giving you the eye on my MacBook. See that one there? Kind of giving you the eye. Working on a bit of stuff at the moment around Craig's podcast. So, and remember, I know I've been saying this for about 6 to 8 weeks. More on the way. In fact, I spoke to someone today. Sure, you don't know this. I can't say who it is, but I spoke to someone today who is quite a high-profile communicator. Like, would you consider guys making a podcast for us? I'm like, no, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. So that's really cool. We'll get to welcoming on board our new patrons and stuff shortly. We'll get to Patreon. And also I spent a fair bit of time on the BHN shop today, getting all the stickers and stuff sorted out. It's not completely ready yet, but we'll get to that a bit later in the show because I think we've left our guest waiting for long enough. Let's get into the first conversation of the night. The president of the National Council of Women of New Zealand is Suzanne Manning. Suzanne joins us right now. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Kia ora, Pat. Kia ora, Chewy. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, there was, I think, the announcement by Winston Peters today for a members bill, which of course means lots of things. It means it has to get drawn and then it has to go through. So there's every chance that this actual bill will never see the light of day. But I think Winston Peters knows what is red meat to his audience. And so he's thrown it out there. We'll get to that shortly because I think we should at least, first of all, have a bit of a quick look. We won't play any audio, but a quick look at the reason that Winston's fired off the need for his penis police again, which are going to be in every public toilets in New Zealand if he had his way. The penis police will be there. By having a very quick 30-second look to remind people, or if you were under a rock at the end of last week and didn't hear it, why he is doing this, and that's from a ruling that came out in the UK. UK's top court says definition of woman is based on biological sex. And just in a nutshell, a unanimous decision, 5 judges ruled in the UK Equity Act, ruled that the UK Equity Act mean trans women can be excluded from some groups and single-sex spaces such as changing rooms, homeless shelters, swimming areas, and medical or counselling services provided only to women. The court said the ruling did not remove the rights for trans people still protected from discrimination under UK law. That's where you kind of go, but isn't excluding them discriminatory? So this is where it's going to be figured out, I guess. But it said certain protections should apply only to biological females and not to transgender women. Of course, there is one sector, especially in the UK, where these voices are very loud, as Chewy always point out, who are celebrating this as the be-all and end-all win, when even the courts are saying neither side should really celebrate this because this is not a win or a final, call. Because the question then raises, how are they going to implement this? But first of all, Suzanne, I know that was in last week, but to kind of talk about Winston, we should probably talk about that first. You got any thoughts about that ruling in the UK, what it may mean, anything at all you want to share?
It's the ruling in the UK, we do tend to follow them in a lot of ways in terms of knee-jerk reactions. Keep coming this way. It happened with puberty blockers and suddenly it's all in here and it's sort of like, hang on, we weren't having a problem. It was UK having the problem and suddenly it comes here. But it's interesting, this overseas global shift that is happening in a lot of places and how it comes here. I noticed that Winston Peters called it a return to common sense. Well, at the Committee for the Status of Women at CSW in New York this year, so that's the biggest gathering of women's organisations and representatives globally, which gets held on an annual basis. And our reps that all went there this year came back saying the major theme was the backlash globally against gains and progressions for women's rights. So there's this conservative turn, this trend to undo all the gains that women's rights have had. So what Winston is calling common sense, our women representatives at CSW this year were calling a backlash against women's rights.
There has been many points made about this ruling in the UK. When these kinds of rulings come in, what they're ultimately going to be used for in public is to discriminate against anybody who doesn't fulfill what that particular group describes as feminine looking. There's been lots of examples through the world of, a butch lesbian or a particularly tall, muscular female being called out for being trans, and they haven't been. And it seems that, for want of a, I guess, less accusatory term, you'll get a lot of the trad wife saying, if you don't look like a trad wife, then you're a danger to a trad wife type thing. If you're not the perfect example of 50s femininity, then we've got every right to question you. And that seems to be where these kinds of rulings have been leading around the world.
And that it is a real problem, because everybody does know the stories of that sort of stuff where people are questioned just because the way they look. I keep my hair short, right? Because it's the way I prefer, and it's easy, and I have ever since my kids started as babies pulling my hair. And many of my mothers, my mother friends have done the same. And yet there's this thing about long hair in women and short hair in men. And so who actually really cares about that? But there is this definition that goes out there as to how we can tell men and women by hair length, even when we all know, there is diversity there. But so when we start ruling, we've already ruled on what clothes one can wear. So like the gang patch thing, anything that looks like a gang patch, even if it's not a gang patch. I do know of some friends who had gang patch looking gear, two of them talking at a service station filling up their motorbikes, and they ended up in prison for the night because they did that. So where do you stop? Absolutely, where do you stop?
Yeah. Chewy?
I think we're sometimes quite naive in the fact that this sickness that the world seems to be catching, the US and the UK, won't transmit to us. But since we follow both of these countries' leads, because they're so dominant in our media and in our discussions, and our politicians are certainly paying attention to that sort of thing, I don't think that we can be complacent. I guess and this is a very selfish question for me to ask, as someone that obviously supports women, whether they're trans or not, how can a man take his role in this conversation? Because that's something that's quite often used against us. It's like, oh, here come the lefty beardy men, tell us how to do it. What's the best way to help? I want to help.
We do need men speaking to men. It is always a big thing, because one of the things I think about with this ruling against trans women, and a lot of it is the fear mongering, because there are some women who perceive trans women to be a threat in their spaces. And they're a threat because they think of them as men. So, the logical thing there is men are a threat. We are afraid of men.
Yeah.
And men who are the stereotypical masculine bearded men. But you're lefty bearded men, so that's okay, But the more men call in, call out, talk to other men about what's appropriate behaviour. That is the biggest thing. If men took responsibility for their behaviour, all this trans women, trans men, who would care? Because we wouldn't be scared. And that's probably not a great answer, but there you are.
But one of the things that seems to be a reality is what this community who are celebrating this decision are actively saying is the trans community are just wanting to harm us.
Yep.
And if not the trans community, men pretending to be trans just want to get into our spaces and harm us. Yeah. And we hear that with all the, the pedo conversations around the world, or the sex offender conversations, where they're actually saying, if you're in this people group is trans, then you are a danger. And that's what they're saying, where you speak to most trans women, or most trans women I've spoken to, and you're like, what are you going to the bathroom for? And they're like, because I need to pee, and I use the stall, and I go to the bathroom. And what you're just saying, Suzanne, I think is the reality is these people that are a threat perhaps to women in their isolation are not trans women. They are men breaking the law who will probably continue to break the law, and maybe the trans community will continue to get the blame for it.
I often think that people saying that men will dress up as women just so that they can go into a changing room to attack women. I don't think that they've thought that through. If you look at the offender stats, men dressed as men are the main attackers of women. So why would you bother? Why would you bother going and spending money on a nice dress so that you can do something that you could do in your normal pants? You know, it's like, why bother? There's so much easier route if you want to attack men. If you want to, like, for example, I'm heterosexual, so, you know, men are cool. And if somebody wanted to take me into, take me off in a quiet place to rape me and wanted to get my trust, he could come on as a man, because that's who I'm going to go with, right? In fact, he would get much more chance as a man than if he dressed up as a woman. So again, why bother? That just people who are doing this are just in a fantasy world, as far as I can see. You know, the people who are saying that this would happen are really just making up stories.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's all couched within concern for women, safety for women, that sort of thing. So, yeah, is there evidence that this is an issue? No. I mean, I get people, like, I had a conversation with someone that works in a sort of counselling space and that sort of thing, at a women's counselling space, and there was concern there about, well, if we're having a group counselling session, you know, people are scared of men, and then there is a trans person there, you know, does that happen often enough for it to be top-down legislated from Parliament? Or is this something that can be dealt with on a case-by-case basis by the people that are frontlining this stuff? Yeah. Is the case now? It just doesn't seem to be a problem.
As far as I know, there is no evidence. But, you know, the people, New Zealand First, who are making this legislation, putting it in, surely they've done their homework. Can they provide us with evidence? That would be nice, because I don't see it. It's just not an issue. When you talk to women, I don't know of one person who has been in any way offended by a trans woman. I know plenty who have been afraid of cisgender men who are just being their normal macho masculine self plenty of times. So there's stories all over there. So no, the numbers game don't work out. Neither does the definitions, you know, like the this biological female. It's just and what does that actually mean?
Well, it makes it sound sciencey then.
And, it does, yes.
And obviously science 100% agrees that there are only two genders.
I looked up
common sense.
I looked up the stats in the last census, the 2023 census. 0.4% of the New Zealand population identified as intersex. That is, they have some biological, whether that's genetic, hormonal, physical, or all of the above, attributes that make it ambiguous. So you cannot actually say that they are binary one way or another. So, like, for these intersex people, what are they supposed to do when they're out and about if it becomes a rigid, we've got the penis police in every bathroom. What if
that's copyright? That's copyrighted, by the way. If you're going to use that, there has to be a little copyright at the end. Just check it.
Okay.
You have to pay us a license fee.
You're right. So what about that? I mean, we're going to be able to tell who are the intersex people in our society. They're the ones with the wet pants because they can't go to the toilet out in public. It's like,
I sent an email today to Jenny Markroft. I sent and called her off as well. She's the New Zealand first MP who is said to be presenting this, fronting it, yeah. And I really have one question, which is, what problem are you trying to solve? Like with this legislation, what problem are you trying to solve? Because what they're talking about in the UK, and these people who are now celebrating that they're going to be single sex changing rooms, for example. Now, we've done this many times on the show before, but I'll just use the term that they're using. So if you are born female, female, born male, male. So we're going back to single sex changing rooms. That means all of these people are going to be in the female changing room because these are all trans men.
Oh, that looks good.
And lots of them, some of them, I don't know them all personally, have penises because some trans men go through a procedure where they get a penis. Yep. So if what you're trying to solve, the problem is single sex spaces, logic dictates that these people are now in the women's changing room. Yep. And it dictates these people are in the men's changing room.
Yep.
Well, I actually was talking to someone over the weekend. I was wondering if trans men should actually just, as a protest, just in force, start using the women's bathroom and go, well, we've been told, I am sort of tongue in cheek because I know that people want to protect their identities and that kind of stuff. But what problem are you trying to solve? Is it about single sex spaces? Well, those people, trans men who are full of testosterone, probably more testosterone than me and Chewy, not hard, but because they're taking it synthetically and stuff, they're buff, they're big, that's now those people are now women's changing rooms, female changing rooms. So what problem are you trying to solve here, Whānau? That's what I want to find out.
And not only that, but what problem will you create? Because if that was going to happen, then as we discussed earlier, how are we going to tell between a cisgender man and a trans man coming in to use our facilities? And we've already talked about it's the cisgender men that we're most worried about. So because you can't tell, it will be like just nothing. There won't be single sex.
Yeah. So for something that they're talking about, it's about safety. Ultimately, it's going to make people more unsafe.
Yes. Yeah.
They'll just be the trans people or the people that don't meet someone's image of what a man is or what a woman is. I mean, there's just such a mixture of like, oh, we're going to talk about biology and we're going to talk about what a woman is and what a man is. And you're mixing biology with a social marker. Like this is the whole thing. Like girl, woman, man, boy, all of this sort of stuff. It's a construct. And they're trying to mix that up with biology and they're getting that wrong as well. And at the end of the day, it's just culture war. It's just punching down on people. And here we go round the merry-go-round again. And this is a government that says, hey, look, we're laser focused on the cost of living. It's all about the economy. And all they're doing is they're just hitting us with culture war after culture war. It's either Māori or it's trans people. There's some other minority that doesn't fit in the majority box that we're going to punch down on. Tired of this. I just want people to be able to exist without being attacked by government.
That would be nice. It would also be nice for us to be able to trust professionals that we spend so much time training up. So, for example, judges are the ones who are deciding on interpretations, like the Supreme Court here in UK. But the interpretations of woman or whatever, unless there is a definition that you're going to put in which case they have to abide by the definition. So just the mere fact if they're going to define a woman, not a man, I think, just a woman.
Yeah, that's an interesting bit as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So to define a woman means that we don't trust our judges to be able to use common sense. So instead of going with common sense, they're sort of like, we just don't want anybody to talk about trans people. So we're going to define a woman so nobody's allowed to talk about trans people. And then, so what happens when the judges and everybody else are faced with actual real trans people?
Yeah. The thing as well is there's a very good hour, if people want to look it up on YouTube, James O'Brien, who we love on the show, who is LBC, I think is the talkback radio station in the UK. He did a whole show whilst the announcement was being made, and just by chance I came across it in the weekend, and the first 2 hours of his 3-hour show was talking about the ruling in the UK, and it's a really, really interesting listen to people phoning in and this question being asked, what are you going to do now? How are you going to monitor this? Because then you have to get into how are you going to check with the people, who they are and if they're coming into the right room. How all these things, how are they all going to pan out? Is someone going to have to check pants? What if the pants look right? And it goes, it's just a horrible thing to even think about. Even though that's not what anyone's suggesting, but the idea of that sort of happening. And there was one particular lady on it who's a trans woman, but she transitioned. They get papers in the UK which enables them to change their sex marker. They can't self-identify their sex marker, but if they go through some paperwork, they can. So she's female now on her birth certificate. And she just phoned up of a previous caller who said, well, only females in my changing room. And so she phoned up straight away and she said, yeah, well, that's me. I'm a trans woman. No one that I know right now knows I'm a trans woman. I've got a F marker, so I'm in the same changing room. So it's literally, again, how do you process this? What do you think this is going to achieve? What are you trying to solve, and how are you going to do it? And I don't know what they think they've got.
I don't think it's been well thought through at all. It's full of holes. And the thing is, it's just ideologically based. It is not about evidence. It's not about evidence of a problem, as we've been talking about. It's just that they have a belief that gender should be binary and therefore they're going to enforce it, except they don't have a means to enforce it. It's like, if I think it will become, or it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing. I don't know if we need to go and look at Winston Peters' tweet. I mean, maybe we shouldn't give him any airtime. We've kind of covered off what we'd mostly covered off. But I want to say one more thing, because one of the common refrains you hear from within the LGBT, the trans community, is they're trying to eliminate us. They're trying to make us disappear. And everyone always kind of goes, no, you're not. No, we're not. You can still be here. Just, do it our way. And I just thought, I was actually listening to that James O'Brien show. I just thought for the first time, well, hang on. You're trying to disappear them from the changing rooms, and you're trying to disappear them from the sports teams, and you're trying to so you're actually trying to disappear them from all of these individual locations and spaces they're allowed to be. So even if you don't realize this, conservatives, what that does, as soon as you take them out of one space, and they're a little bit less visible, and take them out of another space, they're a little bit less visible. If you do that enough times, a little bit less visible, eventually invisible. So it is exactly what you're doing, whether you're aware, whether I'm gracious and say you may not be aware of it, but let's just be clear. Just because it takes, you eat an elephant a mouthful at a time, eventually you can possibly eat the whole elephant. Just because you're disappearing the trans community one opportunity at a time means eventually your objective is to disappear them overall.
I think the other danger there too is the less that you come in contact with trans people, the more they are this scary thing because you don't know. Because when you know a trans person, all your fears go away because actually, they're just normal, nice people. But if you don't know them, you can make them into monsters. And when we've done that before with so many other groupings,
Yeah.
Make them invisible, and then you can make up all sorts of stories about them. And
Any
I
other
tell you just
points?
one thing that
Yeah.
seeing you going on to the Pope next, I just want to mihi to the Pope. He was a great man. And one of the things, because I am Catholic, more out of familiarity than agreement with everything that happens in the Catholic Church, but that Pope, Pope Francis, pushed gender roles as much as he could on theologically sound grounds, and he made a difference. And he just challenged all these traditional conservative gender roles. He's sort of like, well, why do we do it like this? We don't need to do it like this. I'm going to do it different. And so we should do more of that, challenging. And in fact, a lot of this transgender or how you do masculinity, how you do femininity is about that challenging. What's important, what's not. People are important.
Suzanne, it's been lovely having you here this evening. Chewy, is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I want to point out a couple of things that this is a new argument. This like you go back 20, 30 years, there wasn't these discussions about trans people. We didn't call them then by that name at that point, but there wasn't the fear mongering that there is now. It's more weaponized, it's more pointed, it's more spread. You know, I've seen clips of an old Sally Jesse Raphael interview with a trans woman. I've seen a documentary, one of the pioneers of electronic synthesizer music was trans, and that was in the 70s, and that was just not even, it wasn't even an interesting part of that documentary. It was just the early footage. The person that they were talking about was a man. The later footage is the same person, but it's a woman now. People just looked at it as a quirk. Maybe they thought they were weirdos, but they certainly didn't think that they were a threat.
Here in Wellington, we've got Carmen on our traffic lights up in Cuba Street. Celebrated as a Wellington icon.
We can't talk about New Zealand politics and trans issues without talking about Georgina Bayer. You know,
Celebrated.
That sort of, yeah. So why are we taking this great leap backwards? Why is Winston charging into this particular windmill at this particular time?
Yeah.
Oh, can I answer?
Baffling.
Can I answer? Votes. That's all it is. I mean, like I don't know him personally. I've never hung out with him, but I used to live in Tauranga and I've worked in broadcasting for long enough that I've had dozens of interactions with Winston. He doesn't believe this shit. This is not him. This is not what he's all about. This is about votes. This is about him securing a legacy that goes on beyond him with a political party that still exists. This is not his bag. Because you know what he does as he hits it was Asians, 15, 20 years ago, and then it was migrants, and and you notice how they all just fall away because they're not the issue of the day to throw red meat to his base.
Yeah.
I don't believe this is what Winston's passionate about at all. I believe that he is a old man shouting at clouds, trying to hang on to a legacy which probably should have been put into the dust heap several years ago. That's what I think.
And at the National Council of Women, we are getting a bit tired of this because we've got a lot of things that we want to improve for women, and then we suddenly have to defend or switch focus to these non things. We've got a midwife crisis in the country. We need to solve finding, training, supporting midwives. Who cares what they call the people giving the babies? Let's get the midwives sorted, So we're being pulled away from the real issues, and that's what we're not thrilled about.
And Suzanne, I apologise for dragging you away from the important issues to talk about this tonight, but it would
I
appropriate.
love talking with you.
It would only be appropriate though. Just what else? Okay, so let's just put a stake in the ground and say the government wakes up tomorrow morning and focuses on some issues for women that will actually make a meaningful difference, what should they be focusing on?
So the Te Ao Rerekura is the elimination of sexual and family violence plan. We need much more resources into that. We need an independent media regulator so that we can have online safety for our women. We need better maternity services, actually the whole of life reproductive health for women. And I will include trans women on that one, just because we feel it's underserved. So those are the three off the top of my head. And if we had another hour, we'd have a few more.
Well, maybe we should revisit this in the next wee while, and we can see about what actually is important, and we don't have to just be responsible. Because I mean, to be honest with you, if I was still doing talkback, this would be great talkback fodder. But it's like we don't do talkback per se here. We actually want to talk about things that matter as well. So maybe we get you back on and we talk about a more important issue. I mean, this is important for the trans community and to support our trans whānau, but when it comes to things that most of the country is worried about, this doesn't rate. It only rates for a very small, very loud minority of people who want to disappear the trans community, one mouthful at a time.
I went and looked at the petitions, and so there was a petition from a group for this particular bill type of thing. I think 2,500 people signed it. So 2,500 people in this country thought it was worthwhile. The rest didn't.
And then you get 300,000 that signed the treaty against the treaty principles bill, and fucking Winston Peters and David Seymour go, "Oh, there's clearly the feeling in this country for a debate on this." No,
it was an overwhelming.
There's not. Hey, Suzanne, thanks so much for being part. Hey, look, just tell us, in case people want to know more, the National Council of Women of New Zealand. What do you guys actually do? And are you like a group that has membership? How do people find out more about what you do?
So thank you. Look, see on that site that you've got there is join us. You can come and be a member for as little as $10 a year, because we want to make it accessible to everybody. So you can join as an individual. We also have organisations who join us up. So what we like to say we're doing is amplifying the voices of women to policymakers. And so we work at that system level, the political policy. We work across all government parties, all ministries, and with other NGOs, with funders. So we try and be as broad as possible. And as I say, we've got organisations, women's organisations as part of us as well. So what we do is advocate for things that will make life better for women. But generally, we see it as making life better for all genders, because if we have gender equality, it will be better for all genders. So we don't see ourselves as just one. And another thing that we really strong for us is advocating for intersectional femininity, feminism, not femininity, feminism, because we don't have gender equality when our Pacific sisters are paid less than their Pākehā sisters. So we look at disabled women, we look at the rainbow community, we look at different ethnic groups. It's got to be gender equality across the board. By the time you get that, you know, we've got gender equality for all genders, hopefully.
Suzanne, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate your time. Thanks for picking up the phone today, and we will talk again super soon, eh?
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, all the best.
Cheers, Susan.
Yeah, so just once again, I was just going to say.
I was just going to say, I mentioned it in the chat, but I'll mention it now. The moment Winston dies, New Zealand gains a new all-gender bathroom.
I get it. I see. I hear. Understand. ncwnz.org.nz. Right. Let us get to some super chats and stuff. We didn't actually end up going to Winston's tweet. I don't give a shit. We know what he's trying to do. He's trying to play the game. We don't need to pay more attention to it. What did I see in here? There was one that I got. This one here. This I think is a very good point. Talking about feeling safe. Gemini Queen says, I would feel more unsafe if Brian Tamaki was in the room. Mind you, he's got those on fire eyebrows. Maybe there's a bit of drag in him after all. Maybe. I'm just saying. Maybe a little bit of him.
His eyebrows are jacked.
They're on point. I don't know if that's right or not.
They're the opposite of that.
Kiwi Bird says, "Rip the woke Pope." Yeah, we'll talk about the Pope in a sec. Actually, Catholic boy growing up here, I've got some thoughts around the whole thing. Citizen Gold says, "Courts do not set the scientific reality." What else have we got? Kaimatara, you cannot be transphobic and be decolonial. Whakapapa holds all whānau, not just the ones who fit into Crown-approved, rigid, gendered categories.
And this is that plays into what I was saying. Is this is a new thing. Like, it just there's never been that many trans people. You go back. There's people that dressed as men or that dressed as women. They just fucking carried on their life, and it's seen as a little bit of a novelty, but not something to be feared.
I don't know if I agree with you entirely.
Don't you?
Well, because the one difference is the trans community is not a new thing, but the understanding of the trans community is. Like if you look at Georgina Bayer, for example, I don't want to speak on behalf of her. I never met her. I never interviewed her. But the big difference with what's happening now and how the community presents itself now is a trans woman is a woman. I think that is a new vernacular. That is a new way of thinking of this. I mean, you're thinking about in the 1970s, they wouldn't have been called transgender. They would have been called trans, with another word on the end that starts with V, which I won't want to. And I don't think any of those people would have said, I am a woman. You know, so I think there's a different understanding. Yeah. So whilst this is new, I think there's already new understanding, and perhaps with that new understanding, it becomes more of a threat. Because of course, in the patriarchy, why would you want to be a woman? Because the patriarchy, you know, men are the bosses. Men run everything. So for a man then choosing to be a woman, that's incredibly challenging to the patriarchy. And now that there's this verbiage around what a trans woman is, or a trans man is a man. In the past, a trans wouldn't have said, I am a woman. You know, so there's a difference. And I wonder if that, and like, what's the worst thing for a patriarchal person or group to do other than accept that man, quote unquote man, their words, wants to be a woman? Why would you want to be lesser? And that's how the patriarchy thinks about women. Yeah. And so there's a different, so it's more threatening as well. So that, I'm not saying it makes it okay, but that could be where the new, you know, revoltingness comes from.
No, that's an excellent point. I'm also talking about, and just off that last comment, that Indigenous cultures around the world often had words for these people that didn't fit in a rigid gender binary. You know, the one that I can think of off the top of my head is Native Americans had like the Two-Spirit people and that sort of thing.
Whawhaini in Samoan culture.
Something similar as well. It just like, again, it's coming from this kind of Western chauvinist religious-y sort of feel, Western religion, sort of coming from these definitions of what a man and a woman is. And it has been what they look like, their jobs, you know, how they're supposed to behave and act, nature versus nurture, or takatupui. Thank you. That was the word I was trying to grasp. All of these sort of things. And this is why I like what Suzanne is saying about intersectional feminism and that sort of thing. It's good for everyone. And so this is where this diversity is good for everyone. People don't have to be hammered into a box. They don't have to be hammered into, you must behave this way, you must look this way, you must present yourself this way. There's so many times that people rebel against the role that they're handed, the role that society expects them to fit in. To inject myself into this discussion, being a young kid in semi-rural Canterbury and liking drama made me a homosexual, and that was worthy of derision and abuse and bullying. And this is the whole thing. Maybe the goth kids that like to dress up a little bit femme, oh well, now you're a tranny, and bullying, and we've got to hammer you into those boxes. What if we didn't have to do that? How much harm, how many lives would we save?
Yeah.
And what a freer society we would be in for the absolute negative from no one.
I also think there's that huge irony there that these dishonest actors who scream things like free speech and freedom of this and freedom of that from the rooftops are also the ones that want to categorize and oppress these groups they disagree with. I mean, like, I only because I actually have spoken to the lawyer who was a part of it. We have well lost the days of a Jewish lawyer representing Nazis in Skokie for their right to hold a Nazi rally in Skokie, USA. I mean, that is the clearest definition of someone being just pro-free speech and pro-freedom of people than someone who had relatives in concentration camps who then defended this group as a part of the ACLU in the 70s so they could hold a rally in a part of America because they had the right to free speech. That doesn't exist anymore, that world. Now it comes down to free speech means I can say what I want and you shut the fuck up. That's what it means in this day and age.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at a couple more of these and we'll go on to the last couple of stories. Kiwi Bird says trans women are a type of biological woman. Humans are biological. Woman is a social identity. Daniel says, Wee Willie Winston's Inspection Service Limited. Wee Willie Winston's. Arvid says this party goes with him. His legacy will be Shane. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I reckon that's what Shane Jones is doing at the moment. He's actively looking at how he then keeps it around.
Yeah, he's been positioning himself for years, waiting for Winston to get out of the way.
The other thing about this decision in the UK, the courts have made a ruling as to what the word women means in legislation. Legislation is not the way we use words in society. We decide how a word's going to be used. And many of you who have been long-time viewers and listeners will have heard me say this kind of thing before. Chewy, I know you have. But I've been saying for a long time that this whole trans debate, what is a woman debate, is really a discussion around language. Because it will end up being what we in society decide it will be. And at the moment, we haven't decided yet. And for people who go, no, it says it in the dictionary. You know what I normally say? I say, well, what does it say about the word fire? Does it say it means really good? Because young people use the word fire to mean good. They've chosen to use a word in a certain way that's not necessarily the legal use of the word or the dictionary definition of the word. And I still think that a court can rule whichever way it wants. Like if the court had have ruled the other way, do you think those groups that are celebrating would have been gone, okay, we'll stop now. It's all fair, because they think about a word meaning a certain things and others in society think of it meaning something else. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think society will decide what those words are until society gets to the end of the journey to decide what those words are. Just like the word gay. The word gay forever meant happy. Then at a period it started to mean men who loved other men. And now it pretty much only means that. Well, it's changing again a bit to the gay community, being queer in the gay community. But there was a transitional period where that word gay in particular went from one to another. If you want a less controversial one, Mount Egmont. When I was a kid, Mount Taranaki was Mount Egmont. Does anyone call it Mount Egmont now? No, because all of those people have died. It's gone through a generational change and now it's Mount Taranaki. Words are flexible, they change. And just because a dictionary or a court says this is what it means, doesn't mean that's how society is going to use it or understand it. So we will see. We will see.
I think that's a really good point, that this seems like the flailing of the end of a generational battle.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe.
do the kids have a much better understanding of gender roles and sexuality and that sort of thing? And as much as they want to fuck with the curriculum around sexuality and that sort of thing, kids have the internet. They can't keep a lid on this stuff. So it does seem like a generation has exhausted their understanding. Like, I couldn't imagine New Zealand First taking this tack now if they were talking about the entirety of the queer community. They know that ship has sailed and they have absolutely no traction, but they can on this. This is new enough for people that they're like, well, I'm fine with gay people, but I've got questions about trans that I'm too scared to ask. It's too scary. It's too weird. I don't get it. And that's what New Zealand First are playing on. It's disgusting.
100%. Let us. Have we got any more super chats here? No more super chats. Let's move on to the next sort of thing we're going to talk about. I don't think we're going to focus very much on the actual story of the Pope passing. The Catholic Church is fascinating. I remember, grew up in the Catholic Church. Most people would still say to me, "Oh, so you're a Catholic?" Because, like I said the other week, it's like the mafia: blood in, blood out. You can never get out of it, no matter how you reject it for. But I was talking to someone tonight about the traditions around it. I quite like the flamboyance and traditions. Like I want to go to the Sistine Chapel because of my Catholic roots.
Oh, you haven't been? Oh,
I haven't
you
been.
Simply must.
You simply must.
Simply
You've
must,
never
my boy.
been. You've
I've
never
stood outside.
been.
I've been to the
Actually,
Vatican.
speaking of that, do you know what we're obviously referencing the clip from last week from Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan tore that guy to shreds in an episode recently. I saw a highlight on someone else. Joe Rogan was saying to someone, "You've never been." He was mocking him amazingly. Anyway, so let's have a look at. Oh yeah, so that means I'm not allowed to talk about it, because I've never been. I haven't watched this, by the way. I don't know how good this is or not, because I thought we should do something on the actual Pope dying and then show the bit about Luxon, which is the thing I'm going to talk about. So this is the announcement to announce that the Pope has passed.
Carissimi fratelli e sorelle, con profondo dolore devo annunciare la morte del nostro Santo Padre Francesco. Alle ore 7:35 di questa mattina, il Vescovo di Roma Francesco è tornato alla casa del Padre. La sua vita tutta intera è stata dedicata al servizio del Signore e della sua Chiesa.
A time for mourning. They say 1.4 billion Catholics are mourning all over the world. I don't know if that's quite true, but certainly there'll be a billion. Did I say billion or million there? Whatever. Catholics are acknowledging it. So I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I grew up under Pope John Paul II, and he was like the Pope for like a million years. He was the Pope from the day I was born. I can remember where I was living when he died. I remember watching the funeral. It was probably 35 years. And it was quite interesting. I had quite a strange reaction to it because it was really emotional. And I wasn't any part of the Catholic Church, and I wasn't any part of it anymore, but I cried. I wept actually when I was watching his funeral. It was just like 30 years of family history, grandparents coming out of the IRA troubles in Belfast and the Catholic roots and all that kind of stuff. And one moment just kind of flooded out. I don't know if you're anywhere near as connected to these guys, but it is a fascinating process now and what happens. So what happens is they get all the cardinals together and they start to vote. They basically play Pope Idol, Chewy, in behind closed doors.
You're, of course, talking about the recent award-winning movie, The Conclave.
I've never seen it.
Well, you simply must.
Okay.
No,
I've never been. I've never been to see that.
it's a pretty relevant movie because
Yeah.
it's actually talking about what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
About
So they
what
play
happens.
Pope.
And
They
the
play Pope
politicking
Idol.
and the horse trading on
Yeah.
who gets to vote for what pope.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't seen it, good wee nudge there, Pope dying.
And so they play Pope Idol behind the doors, and they end up. Everyone stands out in the main square, and they wait for the correct coloured smoke to come up the chimney, and that's when they know that a new pope has been. So it's very dramatic, it's very theatrical. I mean, how the Catholic Church can have ever had any issues with the gay community? It's gay forevermore. The big
It
robes
even sounds
and
like
the
it finishes with a
sparkles
gender
and the
reveal.
fabulous and gender reveal at the end, and yeah, and they announce it in the way they announce it, and then they have a new pope. So it's kind of I quite like the pomp and ceremony actually of it all, and so that'll be happening. I think the Pope's funeral is this Saturday our time, so it'll be Sunday our time, sorry, Saturday their time, and that'll be huge. I think probably because this Pope's only been around for a handful of years, maybe that's why it doesn't have quite the same gravitas as when John Paul went. But yeah, I don't know. Chewy is kind of an outsider looking in. Do you have any thoughts about it?
I am
in
very
general?
much an outsider. The Catholic Church has its demons, shall we say? But I mean, this Pope seemed to have, as much as a Pope can do it, I guess at this stage, have his priorities straight.
Yeah.
Came from poverty, was advocating for the people of Gaza right through and until his last morning, from the sounds of it. That
He
was-
met with JD Vance the day before, and he died the day after. So I don't know what that says about JD Vance, but there you go.
Well, I did see a tweet where JD Vance was saying that he was about to meet with the Pope and praying for his good health, and then one of the answers was, "Who did you pray to?" Because it didn't work. And other comments along the lines of he just gave up after he met JD Vance, which I completely understand. JD Vance, by the way, wasn't raised a Catholic. He was an atheist up until about 8 years ago, when he converted. So yeah, very, very strange when you look at his religious fervor as definitely a recent thing. And there's nothing more insufferable than a newly minted Catholic. I think the people
It's like an ex-smoker, eh? An ex-smoker are the worst people in the world to talk smoking about.
But yeah, it's we've had such a rapid transition. But like you said, Pope John Paul, Pope for forever, most of my adult life, and then we had, what was it, Pope Ratzinger?
Yeah, Cardinal Ratzinger. Pope, what's this one? I don't even know. Pope Francis was one of them.
Yeah, Pope Francis. He was from South America and done a lot with the poor over there and that sort of thing. So there's a few people talking about who they hope is the next Pope. I see a lot of people mentioning a guy. Is that name real? Pizza Baller?
I don't know.
Pizza Bella? And a cardinal from the Philippines apparently being the front runners. So yeah.
I'm just trying to have a look when Pope John Paul was actually, when he was made Pope. Oh, it's 1978 to 2005. There you go. Forever and ever and ever. Yeah, so look, the thing I did want to touch on with this is also our Healist leader who was in London at the moment, and he managed to talk to Jack Tame. It's funny watching Jack Tame on Breakfast. You can hear that some of the questions are sort of loaded like they would be on a Sunday morning, but they don't quite have the same venom to them. They're still quite precise, but it's not like evidence of, please. It's more like thoughts around, please. It's interesting listening to him in the morning time.
Before you push play,
Please.
can we just comment on the fact, does Luxon own a suit that fits him?
No.
Look at the tie. What the hell is going on? Anyway.
This is just them
just
talking about the Pope this morning. And I thought, I'll leave it till the end. I've actually got something to read you that I received from someone. they didn't inspire me to play this. I haven't heard back from them. I asked their permission to read their email. I will read their email, but I'll just do it. I won't put their name on it. So let's have a listen to Luxon talking about the Pope from this morning.
You're not a Catholic. That being said, you are a person of faith, and I just wondered how an occasion like this makes you reflect on the role of faith in your life.
Yeah, look, I mean, I actually did, my family was Catholic. I went to Catholic school as a young boy. That's how I started. But I mean, the Pope's an incredible person. I mean, he had huge, care for people who were vulnerable and in difficult situations. He had an informality that I don't think we'd seen for some time in the Pope. And also, I think, he had a good drive around interfaith efforts as well. So, I mean, he worked very constructively with people from all faiths, and I think that's really important. So, a really special person, and a big loss to people, and people will be feeling it today.
I'm sure you're all smart enough to pick up on the irony that the Prime Minister is talking about this amazing man who he pointed out some particular amazing things about him, like care for the vulnerable and people in difficult situations, while his government is attacking the vulnerable and making situations more and more difficult for people every day. And I'll read this email to you. I'm not gonna acknowledge who it is because I've asked them if I could read it and they haven't responded, but I think it's fine. I won't even read the jokey bit at the start. I can't. Okay. Talked about not having a lot of money. Okay. I'll just read the actual premise of the commentary on this morning. This morning on breakfast, Jack interviewed the Luxative. Now, I can't quote exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of his admiration for the Pope because he cared for poor people. This led me to having to strip down my keyboard and clean my screen because at the time I was eating breakfast and had a mouthful of cereal and just had a gulp of coffee to wash it down. Before I could undertake this, though, I had to perform the Heimlich maneuver on myself, or I would have died. I would have died, Pat and Joey. And then you'd be one short. He talked at the start of the email about being one of the early adopters. In fact, it would have been easier to die than live in this misery that so many poor, poverty-stricken New Zealanders are in. So when Egghead says the reason for liking the Pope, man, Egghead doesn't give a rat's ass about poor people, which led me to ponder this. Given his track record and the pain, suffering, and misery this guy has caused poor people, I wonder what the Pope would think about Egghead. Stepping away from the microphone.
I'd also like to point out that he made that statement to Jack with all the gravitas of someone giving his coffee order. Like this is when people dunk on politicians for being politicians. Can you imagine that man announcing a great national tragedy or a great national success? Like, it has the same gravitas he has of talking like, oh, the Pope had great outcomes or something. He had his KPIs.
He has KPIs.
Like, it's just, pardon the pun, soulless. There's nothing there. Infuriating.
How do you do a transition into thanking the patrons and stuff now? I don't know if that's particularly easy to do after that conversation. Yeah. Look, it doesn't feel as big a day as it has been. Maybe it's because I'm more removed from it. But, One News tonight ran the Pope story for its whole first segment. So that was like 18 minutes, 16 minutes, something like that, all Pope stuff. So I guess, I don't know whether that means it's a slow news day or it's a story that actually is that big. It probably is. But, for a lot of people, the majority of people, but in quite a long way, it's a older religious man who died today and life goes on for most people. But he was apparently quite progressive as far as they go. When you were saying about who they're going to pick the next pope, I was going to go, I wonder if it'll be a woman. That'd be fully progressive. That'd be the next step, wouldn't it? Have a woman.
There'd be a lot less Catholics around if that happened, I tell you, either from heads popping or people rage quitting. Look, we've got to couch progressive for a pope.
Yeah.
progressive
yeah.
for the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You know, he did talk about gender roles in the church. He did advocate for different causes that weren't strictly speaking in the Catholic sphere. You know, but yes, he's part of an organization that is still trying to cover their butts for decades and decades of real monstrous harm visited on people in the name of the Catholic Church.
And if the Pope doesn't come out and go, we're going to historically go through the record and every single person who has offended, we are going to give over to the police, then anything short of that is not far enough. So as you say, progressive for them is still quite a long ways away from what maybe our audience would consider progressive to be.
Yeah, and that is a big ask. We have high expectations of the Pope, and look, hopefully the next Pope is someone that's going to pick up that ball and take it further down the field. You know, won't know until it's done.
Well, it's a bit like people were talking about. Might have been one of our Sunday night shows. We were talking about who's going to take over from Luxon, and you know, Erica Stanford is my pick at the moment. But people are like, the faction that behind Judith Collins.
But for Pope,
yeah, for Pope, the faction that's behind Judith Collins will have the say. Doesn't mean it's going to be Judith Collins, but that'll be what's happening when they're playing Pope Idol. There'll be factions, and if the faction that's got the most power will want a more conservative Pope, then it will be a more conservative Pope. So it's the factions back there who will end up deciding. So. Yeah, we'll see if this is a trend in the Catholic Church of becoming more progressive or whether it's a one-off. We shall see. From the super chat, Peter, oh, sheesh, what did I just do? I pushed the button. Peter says, personally, hoping for Cardinal Tagle of the Philippines or Cardinal Pizzabella, yes, that's his real name, of Jerusalem to become the next Pope. Oh, wow, crazy. That'd be crazy if it was from Jerusalem. NZ Random says, a pizza bella sounds like a good all-rounder. You know, it's funny how you can make fun of some accents, but if you do it with other accents, it's just incredibly racist. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So,
tangent? Did I just invoke a tangent?
You have tangent. You've triggered the tangent.
I'm sorry.
And of course, I don't have the clip for this, but it's an amazing clip. Hank Azaria, who did a lot of the voices for The Simpsons. I saw a clip just said, did Apu, but talking about it on a podcast about, because he basically insisted that character be retired. And he goes, chat, it's worth hunting out. He goes on talking about how some accents seem very racist, and then some aren't, even though they very definitely are. Like he talks about being a Jewish person, hearing a stereotypical sort of Jewish accent doesn't offend him, but then he thinks about it, and then maybe that is offensive if that was the only representation of Jewish culture that you saw. And he's like, I do in a stereotypical Italian accent. I did Apu. It didn't come from a place of malice. It was just me doing an Indian convenience store owner. And then he spoke to people that said, this is the only representation we have of us in the media. And then there were examples where a hate crime had been done against an Indian convenience store owner, where as they were beating on him, they called him Apu. And at that moment, he knew that he was part of it, and he was just like, I can't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore. Ugly. And it's sometimes interesting to see where people get to from like, well, I'm not doing any harm to people. Oh shit, yes, I am. Yeah, it's an excellent conversation.
It's almost like if you're accidentally damaging people, you're still damaging. Is it that one there? I'm not gonna play
that's the one,
because we're having trouble recently getting blimmin' booted. You'll notice our video from last Monday still isn't up online because Coachella said that funny how Coachella's on all the American news commentary shows, but for us, they decided they'd block us and ban us. Then it came on for 2 days, and then I got another message from YouTube saying, they've changed their mind. They want their content back. So I'm not gonna mess with it, because we don't want people not to see that conversation that we just had with Suzanne. It's important. It's in the ballot. Carry on from Chewy. Imagine if Luxon had to announce a death like King Charles dying or fellow Deputy Prime Minister Winston. I wonder what happened if Winston did pass. Wonder who would do the announcement. Gosh, that's an interesting.
I mean, there's
Keeper of the
comments there.
crypt. Maybe Death would come out and go, he's been dead for 7 years. You just didn't know. That's me with my scythe. I'm doing the scythe around the corner.
He's been operated by Shane Jones with a series of pulleys and levers. Look, a couple of people in the chat mentioned.
Imagine Seymour announcing it. Oh my God!
Like
he wouldn't stop. He couldn't stop smiling.
I mean, everybody's yardstick, I think, at this stage is Jacinda. Whatever you thought of her, like her announcing the lockdowns or talking about the mosque shootings or anything at that national level of gravity. She was excellent at it. Mm-hmm. Really had the gravitas. And then when you don't have it, you notice. So, yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up by saying hello, good evening, and a huge thanks to King Con. King Con. Arya Black. These real names, Arya Black. Arya, Arya? Probably. Arya Black, Gabrielle Butler, and AAB111 all became patrons this week. If you want to be a part of what we do, I think we're going to try and have a meetup this weekend as well. I've got 3 things on Saturday, so I'm going to do my best. It might be at a different time from usual, just giving you guys a heads up, but I might try and get one done for you for this weekend. You can be a part of what we do by heading to patreon.com/Big Hero News if you want to be a part of what we're doing and help us keep the show up and running. Chewy, I booked our tickets for the award gala yesterday. And so when we go up to Auckland for the awards gala and watch Nixon and Nate get their award, we'll be able to sit there. And remember, if we win and there's a speech, you get to do it. And the only thing I want to put in the speech is, okay, Media Works and NZME, there's only 4 of us here tonight, so can one of you guys invite us to your party? That's all we need to say from the front. And we'll go with the best offer. And the other thing is the merch store got a pretty big update today. I haven't quite got all the hoodies and T-shirts up to date, but all the ones that were there last week are still there. I hope to get the last couple up tomorrow, but I couldn't find some stuff I needed. But in the sticker front, there we go. Rainbow buffer sticker, up and running. Tax work less, tax wealth more, up and running. We are the grassroots, up and running. Fuck around, find out, up and running. And here's our new 8-pack. We're just selling 8 packs. That's one of everything. The stickers range from $5 each down to $3 each, depending on quality. What we decided to do, I don't know if anyone would be interested in this, but I think some of these, like the fuck around, maybe not that one, but the tax work less, tax wealth more, and perhaps the buffer ones, and probably the Nikki No Boats as well. Actually, they're all sort of, they're messages that you guys seem to want to put out there. So what we've done is we've actually done a 1 sticker, a 5-pack, a 10-pack, a 20-pack, and a 50-pack. So if anyone felt like getting them and spreading them around your local town in a legal way, or giving them away as gifts or presents, a 50-pack is now $3 a sticker, and the 1 sticker is $5. So we thought we'd put all those together for you in case anyone wants them. It's the same for the Tino Buffer's got a 50-pack and a 20-pack. And I'm pretty sure Nikki does. Nikki No Boats does. Nikki, you there? Yep, Nikki No Boats does as well. And so does the tax work less. So those ones that are kind of messages that we want, that you guys seem to want to put out there, we're just making them available if someone wants to. I mean, you could actually, you could even buy them and resell them, make a bit of a profit for $5 each. It's up to you though. So bhnshop.nz, as I said, there's a couple more t-shirts. There's the grassroots t-shirt, which is done. Going to do it on grey, and I got to put up the fuck around find out t-shirts. I hope you get that done tomorrow. So that's it from there. Joey, anything else from you, sir?
No, that's all for me.
I've got some exciting news. You're watching the chat. I reckon I've got the audio fixed for the thing.
Oh.
I reckon. I'm actually willing to put money on it. Should I put money on it? Someone in the chat? No, I won't do that in case I lose. But I'm pretty sure I've got it sorted. So let's check out to see if the audio is all working on the credits for our lovely patrons. Sorry. The audio is probably working, but I've got to start it from the right place. I apologise about that, but there we go.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by what Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Now, for some reason, we've got super chats coming in after the credits. Audio sounds good from Citizen Gold. I was betting again you, but hey, being against you. But hey, look at you. You know, they can teach an old dog new tricks. Really, really old and really, really new. Anything you want to leave us with, Chewy?
The people are requesting beanies, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I got those beanies. They're down here.
We
I just wasn't
did
that-
trial some, didn't we?
I wasn't that happy with the response, so I'm thinking about trying to get actually stitched ones. And this one's only a bit
Embroidered ones,
longer.
yeah.
Embroidered ones, yeah.
The old sticker on a stretchy beanie doesn't tend to last too good. So yeah,
All right,
we're
team.
working on it.
We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo!
Cheers, fam.